Right, now this week I was planning on making a video featuring some old technology, but as is often the case, unfortunately it didn't function. So then I got a replacement device out and that didn't work either. So today you're going to see a video about something that's new. It's my new printer that I bought this week. Now, as I often do when I decide to buy something, I've got a list of requirements. The first one is this one needed to have a decent quality flatbed scanner on it. That's something I need because I quite often scan documents, put them into these videos, and the one I was using just wasn't very good. And then going down the printer things, it needed front-loading paper trays because I like to put these things up against a wall in a corner, Wi-Fi because I always print things over Wi-Fi, good quality photos as well, and then if it's doing photos I need it to be able to hold photo cards and A4 so I can just swap between the two without having to take them out and put the other one in. Separate inks for each colour so that when one colour runs out you replace that one rather than the whole inkjet cartridge, and also it has to be economical to run, and this printer ticks all those boxes and a few more besides. Here's some more specs off the side of the box, and the reason that this one is economical to run is because it uses this Ecotank technology that Epson developed a few years ago, and it's really quite clever. The Ecotank printers use these ink bottles, and you fill up the tank that's on the printer with the appropriate coloured ink rather than replacing a traditional inkjet cartridge. Now inside this box they've included two full sets of these inks, so just using the inks that they provide you with you can get 14,000 pages of black and white text, 9,000 pages of multicoloured, or 3,400 photos. Now those inks must be a little bit smaller than the ones that you can buy as refills, because if you look along the bottom there you can see that if you get a normal refill set, each one of those yields a little bit more. And a full set of those replacement inks costs a very reasonable £52. But it'd be rare that you'd need to replace all the bottles at the same time, so if one runs out before the others you can just buy that one on its own, and they're approximately £10 a piece. So if I'm reading this right, according to the side of the box, it will print 1900 photos with a full set of inks, and we know a full set of inks costs £52, so that works out at 2.7 pence per photo. Of course, excluding the cost of the paper, but even adding that on, that's a very cheap price for printing out photos on an inkjet printer. And if they were just including the 4 photo inks in that calculation, well, that's about £40, so 2 pence per photo. And also bear in mind, of course, you get 2 full sets of replacement inks inside the box. Now, the official recommended retail price of this printer is £549.99, but of course I'm not going to pay that. However, over on Amazon, they've got £100 off that price at the moment, so it's £449.99. But then again, they've also got a 10% discount below that, so you can apply that on top of that, which takes another £45 off, brings it down to £404.99. But then it doesn't stop there, because you go over to Epson's site, and they've got a cashback deal on. So if you buy any of their printers at the moment and send off proof of your purchase to them, they'll give you cash back. Now, if you were to get this print, the ET7700, you get £75 cash back. You can get £125 cash back if you were to trade in a laser printer. I think they send you a box through that you send it off to them with or something, but I haven't got one of those, so I'm not bothering with that. But still, you can pay £550 if you want for this printer, and people online are selling it for that. It isn't one of those made-up prices that doesn't exist, but you'd be crazy to. You'd be much better off just getting it for, well, £220 off, 40% off, £329. That's a really good price for a printer like this, 330 quid. So there's links to that in the video description text box. However, it would all be for nothing if the printer just turns out to be complete rubbish. So let's find out how good it is. Now, these Ecotank printers have been on the market for a couple of years now, but the earlier iterations had the ink tanks on the side in that big hunch that's sticking out there, which makes the printer quite large. However, they've now updated it and they've managed to incorporate those ink tanks better into the overall design of the printer, making the footprint much smaller. So let's have a good look at this one. Now, inside the box here are the inks. You'll see they've sort of shoved these everywhere down the sides, and that's because I believe you can buy this printer in some countries and in some packages without the inks, or with just perhaps one set of inks. So it's worth just checking the description of what you're buying to make sure when you're buying one of these you're getting 2 sets of inks, because after all that's valued at approximately £100. Now, the instructions inside the box are one of these big fold-out sheets. I always find these a little bit hard to follow. It's better off to download the instructions from the website if you can. Now, here's all the inks that were inside the box. So we've got 2 cyan, 2 magenta, and 2 yellow, which look orange, but they are yellow. And then we've got 2 photo black, and then to normal black, which are in bigger bottles. Those are just for your normal black and white printing on A4. Then this thing, well, this is a maintenance box. Now there's already one of these inside the machine, and this is the spare, and I believe this is where the ink goes when it cleans the nozzles and things. It just stores the unused ink in here, and after a while you have to replace it, swap it out, and eventually when you want to buy a new one, they cost about £12. There's the usual CD full of software that nobody looks at, including myself. I've got no idea what's on here, but if you were interested and you didn't have a CD drive, you could also download that from their website. Let's get into these tanks and fill this thing up with some ink. Now, I can understand there being a bit of a concern about spilling ink everywhere and this being a messy process. Well, there's no need to worry. It's very simple, very easy, and you can't get it wrong. For one thing, of course, the tanks are labelled with their individual colours, but also the connector at the top only fits the bottle that should go in that particular tank, so you can't fill the tank up with the wrong colour. And you can quickly determine how much ink you've got left by looking at the windows on the front of the machine, which of course are all empty at the moment. So let's start filling them up from the left to the right. I'm going to put the large bottle of black ink in first. This is the one that you would use when you're just printing normal text documents. These are vacuum sealed, so once you open them up, of course, you lose that seal. So it's best to use them up as quickly as possible. But as you can see here, I'm filling it up. I don't even have to hold it. You don't have to squeeze it or anything like that. It just fits in the top and it fills it up. It also will stop filling when it reaches the top. You don't need to worry about it overflowing. Now that's something I only read later on. I read in the other document that it said stop when it gets to the line at the top, which is what I'm doing here. But later on I went back and just topped them all up. So that's the first one done. So it's as easy as that. You see, there's no mess there at all. So I'll just need to work my way down the colours now. That's all there is to it. So I think anyone could do this. This is not a problem at all. Now, of course, don't want to leave those bottles on this side or anything. You want to have them stood up. You want to put the lids back on when you're finished. But yeah, it's not a problem just filling that up. And I've got to say that once I had filled them all up to the top, there was still a little bit of ink left in each bottle, which was a bit unusual. I thought they'd use a whole bottle up. But as you can see, they've all got about the same amount left in the bottom of here. So I suppose once I've used a little bit more, I'll top them up again. So time to power it up, and the recessed power socket on this side means you can push it up against a wall, no problem. On this other side we've got the USB socket and the Ethernet socket, neither of which I'm going to be using because I just want to connect up to this one wirelessly. So let's go through the setup procedure. To turn it on, just hold down the power button, choose the language, and then it goes into a initialization process which takes it approximately 7 minutes. After that process has completed, it's time to fill it up with some paper. Now I'm going to put two different kinds of paper in mine. In the larger tray at the bottom, I'm putting some normal A4 photocopier paper, and it will hold approximately 80 sheets of that. And then in the smaller tray above there, I'm going to put some 6x4 glossy photo cards, glossy side down, and it holds approximately 20 of those. Right, so time to print the first page, and of course it's a nozzle check pattern, and it was at this point that I came to realise that the printer doesn't have a motorised output tray. It's something that you have to put into position manually. You lift up this tiltable screen section and then you just pull the output tray out like that. So that means that has to be in that position every time you want to print something. It then goes on to an alignment process. Now this is something you can skip if you want to, but I definitely recommend following it because once it's finished it will mean that the prints are as good as they possibly can be. You have to respond to a number of questions on screen to tell it which of the pictures printed out the best. And once you've gone through that, it takes about 5 minutes, that's it, you're all ready to go. Now it's time to set the Wi-Fi up. If you were using an app on a phone or on the computer, you could set it up from there, but I prefer to do it on the device itself. So it's just a matter of finding the access point and then typing in the password for that using the on-screen keyboard. And once you've done that, surprise, surprise, it tells you that there's a firmware update available. Now I'm not going to do that at the moment. I'll come back to that later on. Right now I just want to know if the printer is working properly. So to find out, I'm going to print a photo on it. I've got one that's on my phone here, so I'll just scroll across the bottom to find the center printer option, and then hopefully this printer will just appear below my other one which is still connected up at the moment. And there we go. And we've got a few options in here. We can look at the ink levels. We can decide whether we're printing in colour or black and white, how many copies we want to print, and also which paper we want to use. So I've selected the 4x6 photo paper. So I think we're all ready to go. Just a matter of pressing print at the top and it should be sending it wirelessly to the printer. So all seems pretty easy so far. I've had no issues with this whatsoever. I'm always surprised when things work nowadays, but 90 seconds later, there we go, the photo appears. I was expecting it to slide the picture a little bit further out than that. You have to reach right in to get it, but still, excellent quality picture. Really happy with that. I mean, it just couldn't look any better as far as I'm concerned, or at least if it did, I wouldn't be able to tell. Right, now let's just see if we can print a photo with all this closed up, if the thing is just going to automatically open up. So we'll just try it again, send it wirelessly, and no, it comes up with information on the screen to tell you to open the output tray, and that also goes back to the phone to say check the printer. So yeah, if you're going to leave this printer on for wireless printing, you've got to leave the front of it open with that output tray sticking out. But again, I couldn't be any happier with the results. There's some really subtle colours in this particular picture that it's reproduced well. This is a terracotta warrior from an exhibition that's on at the moment in Liverpool. But yeah, I thought this tray would be motorised, given the tracks on either side. My previous printer, it's all motorised. The front drops down and the tray pops out automatically when you press print. But never mind. I might as well update the firmware while I'm here. That's the current version, so just go through the menu, select the update. It pulls it down over Wi-Fi, of course, and then updates the firmware. Didn't take long, and I don't know what it was fixing, whether it was adding additional features, but that's the version now that I've updated it. Now I'll show you some of the other features of this printer. So taking the SD card out of my camera, putting it into the SD card reader on the front, I'm able to scroll through the pictures that are on there. Now as you can see, they move pretty quickly, but I do have 500 pictures on this SD card, so it might not be the best way to go through a large card full of photos, but still, as you go through them, you can mark each one of them to say you want to print that, and then you get into this menu at the end where you can select settings for each individual picture, or you can just use the default. So you can produce one at a higher quality, say, and then another one in black and white, that kind of thing. But there you go, there's some more pictures that I've printed out, and again, absolutely brilliant quality. Now don't worry about those lines in the sky, those aren't lines on the printout, that's actually lines across that square. There were wires going across there. I printed this one because I like the colours on it, and just look at the amount of detail in there. Now for me, this is as good as I need a printed photo to look. I couldn't imagine it looking any better if I got it done professionally. I think even if you got a magnifying glass out, you wouldn't be able to see any problems with these at all. An alternative method to taking the SD card out of the camera and putting it into the printer is to select what photos you want printing using the camera's built-in menus. And then when you connect the camera up to the printer using the USB port that's on the front, it will identify those photos and enable you to print them out that way. Now it's a little bit tricky to get across the quality of these pictures in a video, so I've got an idea. What I'm going to do is get this picture from earlier on that I've printed out already. I'm going to scan it back into the printer so we can see how good the scanner is, and then we can compare the scan of a printed picture with the original one. Now when you're scanning a picture, you've got a couple of options here about cropping and the resolution. It goes up to 600 dpi there at the bottom, and whether you want a JPEG or a PDF, and once you've done that, I'm going to scan it onto the SD card, and let's just have a look at the difference between these two. Right, so we'll start off with the original picture. So this is the JPEG straight out of the camera. Of course, it's going to be reduced in resolution a little bit because it's been put into a 4K video, but you get the idea. Now let's look at the scan of the printout of that original photo, and as you can see, it looks really good. Okay, it's gone a little bit lighter than the original. That's something you can change in those settings, but the quality is really there. If we zoom in and have a look at the original one again, just to look at some detail, and then we go across to the scan of the printout of the photo of the original one, the detail's still there. It's a great scanner and a great printer. It really is quite astounding the results you can get with this. I've got to say it has cropped a tiny little bit off the edge though. Now here's a PDF that I produced with the scanner on this printer. The real reason I got a new printer is I started off looking for a flatbed scanner, but I don't really have anywhere to put one, and I thought, well, why not just get an all-in-one with a printer, because I've got a space for that, and I'm glad I did. The scanner on this is really sharp. So this is a PDF, and if you zoom in here, you can see the amount of detail. The reason I've scanned these documents is that sometimes I get hold of old documents when I buy things that other people would want to see online, and I upload them to the various resources where they keep hold of these things. The only thing I was slightly disappointed in though was that it will only let you scan each page as an individual PDF. You can't do a multi-page PDF. So what I've done here is scanned 4 individual pages and then stitched them together in a separate piece of software. I'll just cover off a couple of additional features here. So if you were to get a paper jam, fingers crossed that's not going to happen, this section on the back removes so you can extricate it, and around the back here we've also got an additional paper feeder which you'd use for things like envelopes or thicker card that needs a more direct paper path. Now it's a duplex printer, so I'll print out a double-sided document here using 2 pages out of the PDF manual. Better off to use thicker paper than I've got here though if you're doing this, because the pictures show through from the other side a little bit on this thin paper. But I'll just be quiet for a minute so you can hear what this sounds like while it's printing. Yeah, so unsurprisingly, it sounds like an inkjet printer. Not really noisy, but not quite either. Pretty much what you'd expect. I've got to say that this page also looks a lot better once I'd let it dry out for a couple of minutes. As well as things like this index card, you could also print stationery and stuff like that, but we're not going to go into all that. I think we've pretty much covered all we need to on this one. In fact, one thing that I haven't covered yet is the fact that this will print onto CDs. Do people still do that? I haven't done that for years, but I'm sure there are people out there that would like that facility, so yes, it still does it. So there you go, that was a video review of a printer. Probably not the kind of thing you thought you were going to watch when you got up this morning, but still I think this is one that's worth talking about, especially at the moment considering the discounts that are available for it here in the UK. So if you're in the market for a new printer, I've got links in the video description text box which will take you through to the product on Amazon where it's already discounted. Then we've got that 10% off code, and then I've also got a link in there which will take you through to the cashback redemption certificate over on the Epson website. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.